there, VC. It's been at least a couple years since the last time I did an equipment video, so I wanted to give you guys a tour of the stereo system here in my apartment in Phoenix. This is a 2-bedroom apartment with a fairly small living area, but we have kind of a nice little living room sectioned off where we have 3 walls here. A lot of apartment designs nowadays are completely open, which this one is technically open, but we do have a 3-wall living room, which is really nice, something not everyone gets. So we have a nice square space to have a nice audio and home theater setup. As many of you know, room acoustics are just as important as the equipment you put in them. They both matter a lot, and you know, sometimes you may be able to swing some nice stereo equipment, but you can't always pick the rooms you're in. So when you do have access to a decent sounding room with kind of the right parameters, that can be a really nice upgrade. So I'm really happy with this room. You can see here we have some sound panels up. These are just kind of bargain basement acoustic panels. There's about 5 of them up here in this room. They're not designed for particular waves or anything like that. They're just designed to kind of dampen the sound in the room, to kind of reduce echoes. That's really, I think, the most basic thing about working with a room, is just reducing the amount of just like bare surface glare. You know, we have kind of a faux wood linoleum floor, so we put down a rug here. And between the panels and the rug, this is a pretty nice sounding room now. So getting to the actual equipment, some of this stuff you can recognize in different combinations before. A little of it's new, but for the most part, this is more about how I've kind of configured everything for this apartment setup. So maybe we should start with the speakers first. These you'll probably recognize from many videos. These are my KEF LS50 speakers. I've had these for about 5 years now. I absolutely adore them. I think for small spaces, there's very few speakers that beat them. Now, I've demoed a lot of speakers in the past, and I've had a lot of speakers, and you know, the big speakers are really nice, but the problem is lots of people don't have the space for bigger speakers. I usually don't have the space for bigger speakers. You know, this room, for this size room, these speakers are perfect, and anything more I think would be wasted on the room. You know, you wouldn't really get the low punchy bass that you would get on a big speaker out of a bigger room. That's been my experience. You really need some space for those speakers to open up. So I'm very happy with these speakers for the size, and you know, being a person in their 20s who has kind of an ever-changing, ever-evolving career, you know, I have to be prepared to move at any given moment. And having speakers like these that can work in a variety of situations, as long as you keep them, you know, a foot or 2 away from the wall, put them on some good stands, they're very versatile in terms of what kind of rooms they can go in, what kind of spaces they can go in. If I absolutely have to, I could turn these into a desktop setup if I wanted to. You know, if I had to move somewhere like, for instance, San Francisco, where I would most likely be living in something the size of a large closet, I could put these there. You know, whereas if I had something bigger, like some floor standing speakers, I would probably have to sell them. So that's why I really like these speakers, not to mention the fact that for the size and the price, they really punch above their class. I don't foresee upgrading beyond these anytime soon. So from the KEF LS50s, I have them hooked up with some Kimber cable 8TC speaker wire. I've tried a lot of different cable brands, and I know some people think cables don't matter. I think if you have a decent resolving system, it does make a difference to get some decent cables. You can flame me in the comments, that's fine, I don't care. I really like Kimber cables. I've tested a lot of cables. Some I think were worth the money, some I think were definitely not worth the money. I think Kimber cables are a really nice design, and I really like them compared to almost every cable I've tried in their price point. I've also heard some other good cables. There are some other brands of cables in this setup, but these Kimber speaker cables were actually, I ordered them through a dealer, but the dealer ordered them through Kimber and had Kimber cable make the spade connectors on the amplifier end specifically for my amplifier. So these Kimber 8TCs are hooked up to my vintage 1992 mcintosh MC7150 stereo amplifier, solid state. This amp is 27 years old, same age as me, and I've had this amp for about 7 years now. I've had this amp for 7 years, and it's wonderful. It's 150 watts per channel, both into 8 and 4 ohm, because it has the McinTosh autoformers in it. I've talked about this amp before. I love it. But anyway, the problem with this McinTosh amp is it has very, very small, skinny speaker cable terminals. So regular spade connectors are too wide for them. So I had to send the measurement to Kimber, well, to the dealer, then the dealer sent them to Kimber, and they had to get special spades for me to hook up this amp to these Kimber cables. Because of that, I have a feeling that these Kimber cables will follow this amp wherever this amp may go. On top of that, I have the matching preamp for this. This is the McinTosh C712 preamp, also from 1992. It has pretty much everything you would need in a preamp besides, obviously because it's from the early 90s, it doesn't have a DAC. But this combination I really like. I know it's not as good as the stuff McinTosh is making nowadays. I've heard some of the modern Mac amps, they're really incredible. They're also like $5,000. So I make do with what I have, and for the price, I love this early 90s Mac gear. I think it's really, really well performing, and it handles these KEFs really well. The KEF LS50s are notorious for being picky about amplification, and I think the McinTosh KEF combo really does nice things for them. So going from the preamplifier, there's a number of different things connected to this preamp. I'll start with the thing I use the most, and that is my Rega P3 turntable. I traded up to this turntable from a Project Debut Carbon about 4 years ago, and I really like it. I think it's a very nice sweet spot in terms of turntables on the market today, in terms of what you can get for the money. I did a video on it. I'm still enjoying it. I have made some significant upgrades to it. The first thing I did was I got the reference belt, which is a slight upgrade over the belt that comes with it. Not a very expensive upgrade. Then I added the Rega TTPSU, which is the upgraded power supply. This made, I think, one of the biggest differences in sound quality. It really fixed some of the pitch issues that the Rega has. The Rega, compared to other belt drive turntables in its price range, is very good, but it's still not as dead accurate as it is with the extra power supply unit you can buy. So I got that. I've had that for about 3 years now. And the cartridge on it for the longest time was the standard Rega Elise 2 cartridge that comes with the turntable. And very recently I put this, I've had this Dynavector 10X5 forever. It used to be on the VPI at my family's house until that turntable got the Dynavector 20X2. So because we had the 20X2, I just had this 10X5 sitting around, and I finally put it on the turntable. But in order to do that, I had to get the Rega spacer kit. I had to put a spacer under the tone arm. That took a long time to do, because I had to take the entire tone arm off, screw in the spacer, screw the tone arm back on, reconfigure everything, set up the cartridge, align the cartridge. That was about an hour's worth of work right there. I'm sure if people are used to doing that a lot, it goes a lot faster, but this is the first time I've taken the arm off this table. I love Dynavector cartridges. I think no matter what your price point is, every cartridge they make is a really good value in its price bracket. And when this thing wears out in what I'm sure is going to be many, many years, I'm probably just going to get it re-tipped and keep it going, because I really like the sound. It's very, very dynamic and musical, and it has a really, really fantastic bass definition and bass slam that is really nice, especially on a more compact setup that I have. So, what else do I have here? I have this Michelle record clamp that is designed by Michelle for Rega turntables. It's the Michelle R. However, the problem is that Rega makes their spindles so short that it's really hard to get any type of record clamp on there, because I know Rega themselves do not like record clamps. They are against them in principle. But I take that with a grain of salt, because Rega is also against cleaning your records, which I think is nonsense. So I love Rega's turntables, but their philosophy sometimes doesn't make sense to me. So I have this record clamp. The problem is on the thick 180 and 200 gram records, it simply does not have enough space to grab the spindle and clamp down. So I can't use it on the thick records, but on the old vintage records, the thinner records, I can still use this, and I think it does kind of tighten everything up just a little bit. Okay, so moving on to other sources here. This is kind of the digital mainframe of this setup. This is a Oppo 105D universal disc player. It plays Blu-rays at 1080p. It has a dual ESS Saber DAC and dual power supply. So it really is an audiophile universal disc music player. It has, so the DAC in this thing is great. It plays everything. It plays Blu-ray, SACD, DVD, HD, DVD, in terms of like physical disc formats, CD, you name it. It plays every format really well. And then it also has a lot of inputs and outputs to hook whatever you may up to it. I have a powered USB hard drive in the back there that I have a large chunk of my music library hooked up to on this portable hard drive. And I just plug that into the back of the Oppo, and so I have access to a big digital music library that way that's in lossless format. I even have some DSD files on there because this does play DSD. I also have this USB cable here that if I ever want to stream music off my laptop from Tidal, I can just plug this right into my computer, and it runs through the dual ESS Saber DACs in the Oppo, then to my preamp. So I really love this thing, even though it's kind of outdated now because it doesn't play 4K Blu-ray. You know, I'd rather have good sounding music than bad sounding music in 4K pictures. So I don't think I'm probably not going to get rid of this thing until the day it dies, and even when it dies, I will try my best to get it repaired. Oh, other sources. So I have that running into my preamp. I also have running in my preamp everything that's run off the TV. So from the TV, we are running a Toslink cable, a digital audio cable, down to this shit Modi DAC, just a very simple DAC that has USB, Toslink, and coaxial. We're using the Toslink option on it, and from there we're running RCA down to the Macintosh preamp. And I should say that both the Oppo and the shit Modi are hooked up via AudioQuest Golden Gate RCA cables, so nothing too fancy, but some nice decent RCA cables. And then I forgot to say, from the Macintosh preamp to the amplifier, I'm using I forgot the type of kimber cable I'm using, but I am using kimber cables. So from the speakers to amp to preamp, or vice versa, that's an entirely kimber chain. So the cable box down here, and the TV that has Roku and streaming services, so like Berlin Phil Digital Concert Hall, Met Opera, Live in HD on demand, cable television, and then, you know, if I want to plug my laptop into the TV via HDMI, all that audio goes to the TV, and then from the TV it goes via Toslink to the shit Modi and then the preamp. So everything from the TV is going through this Modi DAC, which helps the sound quality quite a bit, because the regular TV sound quality is quite bad, and most of them nowadays aren't even coming out with, don't even have RCA inputs on the TVs anymore. They just have, you know, headphone out and Toslink. I also have one more thing up here. I have this Akai reel-to-reel deck that was given to me by someone I know in the music scene here in Phoenix, and this thing has been a ton of fun to play with. I haven't had to have any work done on it. It's still working great. I only have about maybe for reel-to-reel tapes right now, because they are hard to find, and you want to get the higher speed ones. You don't want to get the lower speed ones, which are more common and cheaper and easier to find, because those usually don't sound as good as records. But if you can find the higher speed reel-to-reel ones, I have a couple of them. I have some classical ones, and I have like an Iron Butterfly, and I think I also have a Moody Blues reel-to-reel in that higher speed, and I've played those on this, and it sounds awesome. So I really enjoy the reel-to-reel. It is kind of a pain, you know, if you thought getting up to change the side on a record was a pain, you should try using the reel-to-reel, because it's really something I only break out every once in a while, because it requires a lot of work, and it's not just like coming home from a long day and putting on a record. This requires some forethought. This rack I have the setup on is actually a really cheap basic rack from Best Buy. However, it is pretty sturdy. You know, most of the supports here are metal. This is some type of fiberboard, so it's pretty ringy. However, I do have this Auralex turntable isolation pad. I think this is mostly made for DJs, but it was pretty cheap from Amazon, and it works well for the turntable. Eventually I might get a more sophisticated isolation system, but for now this is working fine, and I haven't noticed any vibration issues between, you know, this and this over here. So for now I think it's working okay. I'm gonna move the camera, and we're gonna take a quick look at my headphone setup. There we go. I apologize for the glare. That's just the nature of this room. I close the blinds as best I can. I'm sorry, I don't have a fancy lighting setup. So this is my headphone setup. As you can notice, this is kind of on a table halfway between the system and the couch. This is because, you know, it's hard to get a headphone cable to have a run long enough to go all the way to the couch, and it sucks to get up all the way and you know, come and adjust the volume and do everything like that when you're trying to sit on the couch listen to music on headphones. So because of that, I have this little table here, and it's with two components. I'm running from my Mac preamp on the tape out. I'm running to this monoprice monolith liquid platinum headphone amp. This is a headphone amp that was designed by the famous headphone amp designer Alex Cavalli, who used to design headphone amps under his own brand. Now he does freelance work for a few companies, including Monoprice. So he designed this amp for Monoprice on their monolith badge. This is a tube hybrid headphone amplifier. It's crazy powerful. I think it does like 4 watts per channel into like 50 ohms or something like that. It's really quite a powerful little amplifier. It has a tube front end and a solid state output transformer power section, and it's really versatile. And I think it's you know, I did a lot of research before pulling the trigger on a headphone amp. I tested a few of them out, and I'm really happy with this one for the price performance ratio. It's just an amp. It doesn't have a DAC in there because, again, I already have a DAC section in my front end, and I don't need a integrated headphone amp DAC situation. That's really more for people that do everything off their computer. So I'm happy to just have a really nice standalone headphone amp here in the setup. I am running it out balanced to the newest addition to my setup. This is a pair of Focal clear headphones. Again, I apologize for the glare. I've listened to a lot of headphones over the last year, just through reviewing and work and just trying out headphones, and I'm really happy with the clears. I think they're a fantastically balanced headphone. They don't really do anything offensive. They're kind of the kind of headphone that whatever your taste is, it's very easy to be pleased by them. You know, they have a good amount of detail. They have these really nice highs, this sparkly treble that kind of goes up there, but it's not bright, brittle, or offensive. The bass is quite impactful and satisfying. The mid-range is really quite excellent. It's really a well-balanced headphone. If you're someone like me, I tried the Sennheiser HD800s and they were far too bright for me. I've tried some Odyssey headphones, and those were just a little too gooey for my taste. And this is kind of this is just right. So they're perfect because I listen to so much different music, from classical to metal to classic rock to jazz to 80s industrial goth. I really vary my musical taste quite a bit, and this handles everything quite well. The only complaint I have is that compared to some headphones I've heard, the soundstage isn't quite as expansive as some other headphones, even some cheaper headphones. When put in perspective with everything else this headphone does, it's a really small complaint, because the soundstage is still there. It's not like the soundstage is indistinct. I can definitely pick out instruments and directions in the stage. It's just a much more intimate and closed-in experience than something like, for instance, a AKG headphone, where the soundstage is really quite big and you feel like you're far back in the audience, and there's really a sense of distance and scale in the soundstage. Whereas this doesn't quite have that as much. But in terms of tonal balance, in terms of dynamics, in terms of something that is detailed and revealing, but also incredibly fun to listen to, and doesn't want to make you pour lead into your ears when you put on a recording that was recorded with, a less than prestigious budget, these really kind of tick all the boxes for me. So I'm very, very happy with them. Being someone that lives in an apartment and will live in apartments for the foreseeable future, unlike many people in the VC who are, a generation or two older than me, will have houses for the foreseeable future, a headphone setup is actually really quite important, because, not everyone has the space to have a stereo. There may be situations in my life and times in my life where I won't have the space to be able to set up a big 2-channel stereo like this. So having a viable headphone listening setup that really can compete with the 2-channel system is incredibly important, especially, late at night. I want to listen to a record, or I need to study for a recording for a piece or something. I can really get a satisfying experience out of this and not really sacrifice anything by not listening to the big setup. So I think that's everything. I think I managed to get every little piece of gear in this small room. So this is what I've been listening on for roughly the past 2 years. I feel incredibly lucky and privileged to have a system like this, to be able to come home after a long day and relax and put on a record, or to be able to do some really intensive score study, and really get into the music, the meat of the music, hear everything that's going on in the orchestral recording. And to just have a place in my living space that's dedicated for music enjoyment is really something I cherish and hold dear. One of my favorite things to do is have people over and just listen to records. And it's something that, people from my generation, I'm 27, and so people from my generation, this is kind of something we're not really used to anymore, is just having a social time that's just listening. And it's something I try to do in my friend group whenever the opportunity strikes is hey, if we're not doing anything this weekend, come over and we'll listen to some records, and we'll have a beer and just listen, and then we'll talk about what we heard. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, come over and listen to my stereo, and I'll put on this test record, and you can hear the different drums in the different part, and you can hear the rumble of the steam engine. No, it's the stereo takes a backseat to the music, but it's like, hey, when's the last time you really sat and appreciated music at the apex of what it can do, what the recording has to offer on the master tape or on the the studio master? When's the last time we gave the artist that kind of appreciation? To just sit and absorb what they have to give us. And that's what a stereo like this does, and that's what I love sharing with people. I love hearing people kind of go, oh wow, I've heard this song before, but I've never really heard it like that, and it kind of affects me in a different way. I've gotten a lot of those reactions over the past many years. I've been into hi-fi audio. And that to me is one of the most satisfying things, and that's why I love having a stereo, and I love the musical moments this setup gives me. So thanks for bearing with me through another one of these tours. Again, as everyone is kind of stranded home because of the coronavirus and social distancing and all of that, which is a good thing. You should be listening to the CDC and health experts, because this stuff is no joke. But you know, while everyone is home, we all have the opportunity to listen to a little more music, and I've had the opportunity to spend some more time with the system and also to make some more content. I hope to do some more content still while this thing is kind of happening, because you know, a lot of us have either very limited, reduced, or no work right now. So I'll be putting out some more videos too shortly. But thank you once again for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, all that, you know, standard YouTube stuff. And I will see you guys next time. Cheers, VC.